Hi, I'm Rainer and welcome to my train room. In my last video, I was working on the scenery up in my park area up here. I put new ground cover in here and got all the nice fall colors in the trees and put a couple of scenic lookouts, a set of stairs up there and some people up on the hillside. And I have this little booth down here and my picnic tables, and it looks like one of my bears has fallen over. But in that video, I mentioned that I had one more building that I wanted to put up there. So in this video, I thought I would build that building. A few months ago, I was at a train show in Midland and picked up a couple of these little laser art structures. There was a vendor there selling a whole pile of them for really good prices. I think I paid, I don't know, maybe $5 for it or something like that. So I got a couple of different buildings, but this one is supposed to be a HO scale burger stand. So it's a little, just a little kind of a wooden building with a spot in the front, little awning at the front and picnic tables, and no idea what this kit's going to be like to build, but I thought I would build it and then put it right up in my park area so that the tourists coming in have a place to buy something to eat and, get something to drink, things like that. So that's my idea. Figured I'll try to build this thing. I did open the box briefly and just took a look, and it looks like all the parts are there. So we'll see how this goes. No idea what this thing is like to build. And but once I get it done, I'm hoping if it turns out okay, I'll be able to put it up in my park. So let's see what happens. Here is the burger stand I'm going to try to build. And let's see, we've got some instructions here. This looks like a bunch of detail parts of some kind. What is this? Yeah, this looks like potentially the back wall. Inside has like maybe an air conditioning unit. There's countertops and equipment, things like that could be painted potentially. That's for the inside, I'm guessing. And this would be the front counter. So yeah, no, these are plastic, some sort of molded plastic. So these are, so here's the rear wall, all the equipment and the countertops, things like that, to paint that. And this would be the front counter where people can walk up and order stuff. Yeah, that looks like that would be the shingles for the roof. It's basically cut out of black paper. Clear for the windows. This has a brick pattern on it. Picnic tables. Looks like picnic table tops and benches. This one is, they call wall sheet number 2. This is the porch sheet. Wall sheet number 1. It's been popped apart, so that's the first one. And this is all the pieces of trim. And these are the subroof because you put the shingles on top of them after that. Looks like I have everything here. So let's just put the trim pieces back in here for now. Since I've never built one of these exact type of kits, I'm just going to carefully follow the instructions and go through it and figure out what I need to do. And do exactly what they said of just cutting out the pieces as I need them. So it looks like I need to get this piece right here, this wall section, and this end wall out, and then start gluing them together. So right now I'm putting on the trim pieces, but to get to this point, all the corners have these little interlocking tabs, and the instructions, you just have to look at the pictures carefully and you can make sense of it. I just use some wood glue to glue the corners together, put a little bit of glue in a cup here and just use a toothpick to put it into place, and then let each corner, or two corners kind of I did at a time, let them dry, and then once they had set, I was able to finish assembling the rest of it the same way. Now the trim pieces, they are all on this sheet and you just have to figure out where they go from here. But none of the trim pieces are actually numbered or labeled to tell you which one goes where, so you kind of have to hold the sheet up to the building and figure out which one fits where. Now, this front piece, it shows you to put that on, and then it sticks out on both sides a little bit so that these side pieces overlap so they match. So it's actually pretty carefully made so that it does fit really well. But, you know, like this back wall, there's this piece that goes on here that's should be, if I measured it correctly, yeah, it sticks out a little bit on both ends, so it matches up with these side pieces I already put on, because there's two more trim pieces that go in here, but they're just a little bit shorter. So you have to carefully hold this sheet up to the building and figure out each piece. Now these trim pieces are actually peel and stick, and the peel and stick seems to be working. It's some sort of a 3M material, it's labeled on there, so just pull that off and carefully position it on here. Leave it sticking out so it matches that side trim, and then I will try to slide it to the top of the wall and make sure it looks good on this end. And according to the instructions, you do have a little bit of time to reposition, just like most double-sided tape or anything like that. When you first stick it on, it doesn't grab instantly. Like, it grabs, but you have time to reposition it. So just put that on there, and that looks good. And now I'm going to try to find trim pieces for inside here. Now, the reality is I wish this building was kind of reversible, but it isn't, because where I'm going to be putting it on the layout, it's going to be visible from this side, but not this side. So all the stuff that I do in here is, well, nobody's going to see it, at least on this layout. Now, you know, maybe things will change down the road. I'm not planning on it, but at least on this layout, it's going to be facing kind of from the side here, and people walk up on this side to get their burgers or whatever. So I can't really, in that park, I don't think I can spin it around the other way. I haven't really tested it, but I think that it's going to work this way better, which means that this kind of detail in this area is going to kind of be hidden, but we'll see what happens. So there's two more long boards. It'll be this one, and I think they're both the same length. I'm just going to pull those out. Then those two are exactly the same length, so. Now we have a bunch of vertical pieces to put on here. Same thing, we'll match up the lengths. I see there's a couple that are notched because there's supposed to be a brick panel going on the front. So you have to look at the drawings very carefully. So what I noticed with these two boards is the top one end is very slightly angled. It's difficult to notice, but it is slightly angled to meet up with that angled top board coming down. See, the nice part is these vertical boards, when you put them on here, it covers those tabs that stick into the wall to hold it together and makes it look a little more believable. Now, I haven't figured out what piece goes in here yet. Something needs to go there, but didn't see a piece the right length yet. So I'm assuming I am missing something or misunderstanding something yet at this point. So I'll just leave that and do all the other parts until hopefully it explains itself eventually. As I was painting this, I started to think again about where I'm going to put it on the layout up there, and I realized that, well, I don't want to switch the camera view to the top, but basically my hillside is going to come up here, my track goes across the trestle over here, and so you're going to be viewing it from this side, and all you're going to see is this blank wall and the takeout counter here, and it's actually kind of the wrong shape and size for what I'm hoping to do there. So I just realized that there's nothing stopping me from just removing this section of wall and making it a much shorter building, because this is how it works, is you fit this onto the floor like this, and this is going to be the little eating area. There's the two roof pieces, so this is supposed to go on one side, and this is the roof, kind of where these picnic tables that I have to build go inside underneath this roof, and this is the counter where you order the food. So I could just remove this whole back section and make this a separate building, is what I'm kind of thinking. I can just take the roof and, cut this section off the right amount to fit in here, and then, use some more of this wood or almost piece of almost anything as a roof on this, and make two small separate buildings out of it. So I think that's what I'm going to do, because I think it's just going to fit the space a little bit better and look a little bit better in my park scene to have a smaller, less imposing, I guess, or a smaller, more subtle building anyway. So I'm going to see how that works. I'm going to try to cut it. I think it's just going to be a matter of cutting it carefully with a knife. It's pretty light wood, so pretty soft wood. So we'll see how this goes, and yeah, if I can get this cut apart, I think it's going to work better for that space. So now I just have to, the glue was popping apart from me cutting it, so I just put a little bit of super glue in there. Once that grabs, I'll just need to trim off a few little bits that are sticking out here, and then try to fix up the trim that's missing now on this corner to make it look like the other side. And I think it's going to actually work out okay. So that's kind of the plan. I'm going to just try to cover this up and then finish the painting over here. This part did get painted because that's where I was holding it with my fingers. So once I do that, now I'm just going to fix up the trim in the corner, and then paint the rest of it gray and blend it in, and it should look good. And then I will need to figure out the roof size. So let's see what I can find for trim pieces. I've installed the interior in here. I put all the detailed parts of the back wall, the front counter in here. I also glued a little person in there behind the counter. Probably not going to be very visible when it's on the layout, but still, if somebody decides to take a look, at least there's something in there. I glued both of the picnic tables underneath this roof here because, well, before I put the roof on, because I figured it's going to be kind of tricky to get them in any other way later on. And then I have attached this front roof, glued it on. Once the tab's stuck through it, just a couple of drops of glue there and a little bit of glue on the support at the front. You can see my little menu board inside there. I've glued a little Coke sign on the side using some wood glue. But now I need to get the light wiring hooked up. And this building, just like all the other ones I have in my layout, I'm using these little 2-pin connectors. I'm putting the male connector on the building, and then the female plug will go under the layout, and the red and the black wires from here, I'll have to extend them, go to the closest 12-volt terminal block I have. So under my layout, under both decks, I have various 12-volt terminal blocks that are switched from my main control panel, and those are the power supplies for my lights. So I will just run these wires to that terminal block, and then when I put the building in place, I will just connect these two wires together. I'm using these same kind of connectors throughout my whole layout, so it makes it really easy. I buy these on Amazon. I've got one set I got on AliExpress as well, but we have a postal strike right now in Canada, and so a lot of stuff from AliExpress is not arriving. So I ordered these on Amazon and got them next day, and I think it's around $19 and change for a pack of 20. So basically, it cost me about $1 for this pair of connectors. Makes it really easy though to move the buildings. So I've got a couple of these little mini LEDs in here. I've glued one to the roof panel that's going over the back part, and I've got another one glued underneath this front roof section. And what I'm going to do with them, because these LEDs can only handle about 3 volts DC on their own, what I'm going to do is connect them in series and then run them through this 1K resistor. Now this 1K resistor is plenty. All they would need is about a 510 ohm resistor or something for one of the LEDs. But what I'm going to do is put the 1K resistor on them, and that will make it just a little bit dimmer maybe, and it will make it safer so I won't have any problems. For the actual wiring, these LEDs come with a red and a blue LED on them, and the red is the positive, the blue is the negative. So what I'm going to do is connect them in series. So I will connect the blue of one of the LEDs. So I'll connect the blue of this LED to the red of this one, and I'll just shorten the wires a little bit because it's going to be a lot of spaghetti to stuff into that little burger shop otherwise. Now, remember, if you buy LEDs, the kind that have this insulation on them, they're not too bad to work with, but some of the smaller ones than this have this kind of a clear, almost lacquer on them, and those are a bit of a pain to strip, and I found that I don't even bother trying to strip them. I just leave the wires really long because I found that I have more issues with them trying to keep them insulated and getting a good connection and all that kind of stuff. You can kind of scrape it off. So I put a little short length of heat shrink over one of the wires, and I'm just twisting together. I will put a little bit of flux on here. My soldering iron is hot, but I forgot to straighten out my solder. That's all it takes for soldering. A little bit of flux, just touch it with the solder that's on the soldering iron. And then I will heat the heat shrink tubing up to insulate the joint. And the reason you want to insulate them is so that these various joints inside don't bump together and short out and cause all kinds of problems. And now I will do the same thing with the negative wire that's coming from this one, but this is the one that's going to get the resistor. Now, it doesn't really matter which wire the resistor goes on, as long as it's somewhere in the circuit path so that it will keep it from frying your LEDs when you feed 12 volts to it. So same kind of deal here. Now be careful if you're soldering these, don't hang on to the LED lead because they get hot really fast. But one of the things I like to do is I like to use a really hot soldering iron because that means I can solder things very quickly, melts the solder quickly, and it doesn't end up overheating my resistors and other components. If you use a soldering iron that's not hot enough, it takes a longer time for it to melt the solder, and you risk damaging your resistors and things like that. I like to do it nice and quickly, and then I know it's done. So what I'm going to do here is I will take the black lead from this. We'll need to connect to this resistor. Of course, I've got to run it up through the bottom of the house first. If I don't do that, I'm going to have an issue. I've already drilled holes in the bottom here. I'm going to run the red and the black wires up into the house. And this, after this, is where the house doesn't sit flat on a table anymore because I've just, well, messed up the bottom of it by having a plug sticking out the bottom, but that's okay. On the layout, there will be a hole. Okay, and I'm going to put some heat shrink tubing. This one I'm going to use some slightly larger tubing because, well, the wire coming up to the bottom is a little thicker, and that really thin tubing I've got is probably not going to work. I had to get my heat shrink tubing back to me because it had fallen to the floor of the house along the wire. You can just use the soldering iron to do this, but a lighter is faster. And again, just shortening the wires a little bit because, well, the more wires I have, the more I have to stuff into there, and the more they might show through the windows and things. So. And I had accidentally turned my soldering iron off. So at this point, the lighting should be ready to test, and I'll show you that in a second. But I'm just going to review what I've done here because I know I get questions in the comments sometimes about wiring things, and I just thought I'd cover this in a little bit more detail again. So if you think of it that the power is coming in through the positive along the red wire, that red wire is connected to the red wire from the first LED, which is this one here. And then the negative, the power then continues through that LED, out the negative of that LED, and into the positive of the second LED, which is under here, and then comes out of that negative on that LED, the blue wire, through the resistor, and then the resistor is connected to the black one here. So the resistor, both LEDs are all connected in series. Resistors are not directional. It doesn't matter which way you put them on there. The LEDs are, so the positive has to be connected to the positive here, and the net positive of the next one has to be connected to the negative of the previous one. So right now I can test them, probably a good idea to do. I just need to get the power turned on here. So I've got my 12 volt test leads here. What I'll do is I'll strip the wires on this connector just a little bit more to make the clips stay on better. What I have here is just a piece of wire with a couple of alligator clips on it that's hooked up to one of the 12 volt power supplies on my layout. So I can use this, and this is connected before the switch. So I can just turn the power to my layout on, and it gives me a test lead for testing the lights in various buildings and things. And as you can see, I have an LED glowing right there. And then there's an LED on inside underneath here to light up the front of it. So everything's working. Now I have to just get this put back together. So the roof is attached, and I am now going to attach the roof to my little other part of the building that I cut off and painted, and it's going to be kind of my little storage shed. So what's left to do on this? Now I'm going to put a couple of these little wooden skewers underneath here to try to give it something to sit on so it's a bit more flat, because, well, my wires are not letting it sit flat. So the last step on this is to do the roof shingles, and you saw when I was unpacking it, it had these the black paper cut up as shingles. So I think I'm not going to do the little loose shingles. The options on this are to do what they're calling tar paper or little individual shingles. I think I'm going to keep these shingles for something else down the road. It's always good to have supplies, but I think what I'm going to do is I am going to use this other one that they're calling tar paper, because where is this building located? This is in northern Ontario that gets a huge amount of snow, and this roof does not have very much of a slope. And if it was a very shallow slope like that with regular shingles on it, we're going to have ice and snow backing up, and it's going to be leaking underneath. So I think I'm going to do the tar paper thing. That's my theory. So I'm going to get this roof glued on, and then I'm going to get it onto the layout, and we can have a look and see how it looks. So I got my little hamburger food stand booth up on my layout here. Finished putting the roofing on, and then I added a couple of details like a little vent fan up here, and there's a chimney that you can't see from this camera angle. And then I did some weathering on the roof and on the walls with some of this Floquil dust. I have quite a few bottles of old Floquil paint still around. Drilled a hole in there and ran the wire through for the lights. As you can see, the lights are working inside there. One thing that I did have to do once I got it in place was I noticed that the floor was kind of above the ground because my plaster underneath the grass here is not perfectly flat. And so I just put in a little bit of old black ballast and kind of filled it in, then put some of this other ground cover on there and just kind of glued it down. It's not totally dry yet. And but then I just put those other benches and table on there, and just kind of disguises the front edge of the platform. So kind of, well, I don't want it being sitting way above the ground. So anyway, I'm happy with where it is. I'm going to need to do some more detailing around it and things like that. But overall, I think it's looking good. I think it fit in there really well. And I'm glad I cut it off, because otherwise the building would have been back to here, and it just would have looked too big for this site. As it is, what I've done is I've put the other smaller building at an angle behind here. And so now when I have my tourists come in here to visit the little park, and hopefully the bears decide to leave while they're here, they'll be able to go over there and buy hamburgers and fries and things like that, and sit on benches in the shade if they want to. So I think it's looking good. It was a good little building to build. I'm happy with how it turned out, especially with the modifications. It looks about the right size for this site. Anyway, hopefully this will give you some ideas. You know, again, this kit, I picked it up for like $5 at a train show. No idea what it was like to build. Pretty easy to build. It's a little bit more finicky in some ways than some of the plastic model kits, but I like the end result. It looks pretty good. And anyway, Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.